So I wrote down just a few because literally, I guess this is obviously a popular subject, which is not that surprising, I guess, but I just wrote down a few to ask you at some point.
No, I think it's going to be great. You know, I think our biggest hurdle is going to be not excluding people who are. I think people feel like if you're a Catholic or a Christian, or unless you're a Catholic or a Christian, then this isn't for you. So, I think that is my biggest challenge, is making sure that this podcast episode is for everybody. You know what I'm saying? So
let me do a proper intro for you, and so that everybody knows, I didn't just randomly pick you out of somewhere, and you're not just randomly coming up with things, right?
This is true.
Yes, so you're in Rhode Island. Is that okay to say that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Oh, right, because your Facebook group is going to say the same thing. I looked it up, by the way. Is that going to go up pretty soon?
Yeah.
Awesome.
I was just figuring a name that was, there's a Rhode Island Philosophical Society, and unfortunately, I don't want to get too close to them.
Gotcha.
So I wanted to kind of differentiate myself a little bit. So I think it's going to end up being the Rhode Island Demonological Society. So I think I'm just going to stick on that, and then, hope other religious phenomena trickles in. But to be honest with you, Shannon, most people are interested in demonology.
You said they aren't?
They are.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, wait a second, what? Okay, yeah, they are, yes, yeah.
When it comes to weeping and lacrimating statues, they're all like, yeah, let's hear about the good stuff,
We don't want to hear about gremlins. Yay.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh. Oh, I have a quick question before I get to the intro. I'm sorry. I just want to see I'm already on a tangent. I apologize.
That's why I love your show.
Thank you. Did you hear my episode with Brennan Storr, the Canadian episode, Revelstoke, Canada?
Yes.
With the gremlins and the milk, and is there any
Yes.
tie in there with demons, or what do you think that is?
Well, it's funny because my encounter, and I think it's just because I was a kid, looked like a gremlin. And I'm not sure if that's just because, I was a child and it was, a form more easier for me to accept and understand. But, as far as I'm concerned, I've heard you say the same thing, that all these phenomena that we talk about in these various, 40 so-called podcasts that we listen to, everything kind of, I think, falls under one umbrella in some way, shape, or form. And, to me, the umbrella is this. It's all best to do with demonology and the cosmic world, and gremlins, I don't know. To me, it sounds like it would be more of a case of, poltergeist activity or some type of demonic, not demonic possession, but demonic oppression in that case.
Okay. Yeah. Like the whole milk thing, I was like, that's new to me. And that's pretty cool because not a lot of things, being interested in this for so long, are that new. But that was one that got me.
No, that was really, really a great episode because the way the guy said it, he was like, "Nope, you've got gremlins." I was laughing hysterically.
Right. It's like, oh damn, those things again. Like what?
Right. It was so matter of fact. It reminded me of the movie Gremlins. Not the first one, the second one, where Hulk Hogan's watching the Gremlins, and then the tape recorder goes off.
So we're kids in the 80s, so. Gremlins and E.T. and all that, that's up our alleyway right there.
Exactly. And then they go to Hulk Hogan and tell him that there's gremlins messing around. He tells them to put the film back on. That's exactly what I thought of while that guy was talking. I'm like, gremlins! You've got gremlins.
Oh man, I can't imagine. And hey, if milk fixed all of this, I'm sure everyone would be tossing buckets of milk outside, right?
What's funny though, because whenever I go into a Chinese restaurant around here, they always have oranges out and water and things like that for their spirits and whatnot. So I think leaving physical food is pretty common a practice for various cultures across the board.
Yeah, indeed. Well, let me go no further without making sure people know who you are. And all of your accomplishments. So you are Jon-Paul Capece, and you hold a master's degree in theological studies. And you have also studied, which I find fascinating as well, the ancient church, and moral theology, which you said also ties into demonology, which we'll discuss a lot this evening. And you're an assistant professor at a university there in Rhode Island. I don't know if that's okay to leave that in, but I know that was part of your email. So you were an accomplished fellow. Yeah,
and I'm also a recovering drug addict. Can you imagine that? So to come from all of that and get into the world that I'm into now has been something, and I think that if I start my story from the beginning, which I will when we start talking about it, I think the drug addiction was part of the process of me getting into demonology.
Right.
And I do think that there's a demonic aspect to drug addiction. But yeah, I am an assistant professor right now, and I'm slowly creeping my way into their humanities department where I can finally start teaching on things like philosophy and theology and, world religion and things like that.
Yeah, I think that a really wonderful line in your email was that everything in your life you believe has happened for a reason. And I think that's a powerful message that a lot of people need to remember, even the bad stuff, right?
Especially the bad stuff. Thomas Aquinas, the famous church theologian, he didn't believe that there was such thing as a necessary evil. He would call it an obligatory good. Because inherently things that are evil or things that bring us hardship make us stronger in a way. I've heard it said that, pain, I think it was C.S. Lewis, pain more or less tempers the human soul and human spirit like fire tempers steel, so.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, let's start from the beginning if you don't mind.
I don't at all, so. And just before we go, I'm not afraid to talk about anything, Shannon, just so you know.
Okay.
I won't get into details about my drug addiction. I don't want to, trigger anybody. And I know you have, you're going to edit stuff out, which is great. So if I start to go somewhere that's weird, don't, just tell me.
Well, I mean, that this whole thing is based on weird, but on the flip side, if you say something or a name pops out or, and you're like, hey, that needs to be cut, then you can also let me know. That's the nice thing about doing the old pre-recording and the not, pardon my French, but doing it live is a shit show. So I don't do that anymore.
I can't even imagine.
Yeah, it's a nightmare.
And I know I know your show is uncensored. I believe I've heard people swear a few times.
Yes.
I do have a tendency to swear a lot, but I'm going to
A-okay. I think that I was a pirate in my last life. I'm not saying a female. I'm saying I was probably a dude. I drank rum. Well, I drink Jack, which but maybe it was rum because that's what pirates drank. And so, yeah, no problem with the language.
Okay, good. So there was a period of time, I want to say about 9 or 10 years old till about 14 years old, when I was really in tune with the universe. I just was. You know what I'm saying? I would lie awake at night and I would think about infinity basically, and I would get myself into such a state. I was a very scared and very nervous boy. As 10 years old, 9 years old, I had PTSD, from an event that happened when I was younger. And it was undiagnosed PTSD. This didn't come out till much later in life. So I was a really kind of shy, scared little kid, and I would sit in bed and I would think about nothingness, and I would think about what it would be like if I were never born, or when I die, or when my parents die, and when all trace of me just ceased to exist. And I would work myself up into a state where there was nothing in my mind, which is really, really hard to do, and I would get myself into the state of, complete reality with a blank, empty head, you know what I'm saying? And it would scare the shit out of me, and I would have precognitive dreams when I was a kid. For example, I had a dream that a bomb went off next to my grandmother's house, and the next day, I had a dream that a bomb went off in my grandmother's house, and the next day, a bomb went off on the same street as my grandmother's house. I would have, dreams of people that I had never met before, and then I would run into them in the market the next day or see them in a magazine. So I had, when I was between the ages of 10 and 14, I had a real connection, spiritually with things. And it was around 10 years old, when I had my, confirmation experience, so to speak, so because I was such a nervous, scared little kid, I had a hard time sleeping, and more or less I would just kind of lay awake and wait for my dad to go to work so I could run and crawl into bed with my mom. And he would go to work really early, at like 5:30. And as soon as I heard him leave, I ran and I'd jump in bed with my mom and sleep for a couple of hours. And so this particular morning, it was the same deal. My dad left. And I grabbed one of my stuffed animals, and it was this cool little stuffed alligator with a little zipper for a mouth that you could put a stuffed fish in it.
Nice.
Anyway, yeah, I used to I was nuts with stuffed animals. I was a kind of confused kid. But anyway, so I remember going into the room just like I had done, 100 times before. Only this time, as soon as my head hit the pillow, I immediately felt like there was someone else in the room. So I sat back up in bed and I looked into the corner of the room and I saw what can only be described as this type of gremlin thing. It was, and at the time I hadn't seen the movie, so it's not like it was, fresh in my head or anything like that. It was about 3.5 feet tall. It was really, really squat. I mean, like it was so squat. It had a pot belly and everything. It had skin like an iguana or like a snake. So it was scaly, but not big scaly. And it was greenish, brownish, goldish color. It was, like I said, it was really squat, and its head was like a sideways football. It had an enormous head with these big, round, like yellow cat's eyes, like with slits in them. And a mouth that went literally from one side of its head to the other side of its head. And its lips were parted and so slightly, and you could see in its mouth just what looked like millions of tiny little teeth. You know what I'm saying? And it had ears like pig ears almost, kind of popped out to the side. You know what I'm saying? And, I sit up and I look at this thing and I'm just looking at it, and it's looking at me, and I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. I'm 10 years old here. So I do what a 10-year-old does, and I lay down and I put the covers over my head, right? And, I don't know, maybe for 15, 20 seconds I do that. And then I take the covers back up, I sit back up. It's still fucking there. This isn't one of those things where I look and I look away and it disappears.
Right.
Like, it's still there. And now, it smiles at me, right? And it raises its left arm and it waves. Now, not like a wave, big flappy hand. Hey, how you doing? But it just raises its left arm at the elbow and kind of opened and closed its hand a few times, like that type of wave. And you could see it kind of smile like a little bit. The corner of its lips went up a little bit, kind of showing off its teeth. And I threw my stuffed alligator at it. I just hauled off and chucked the alligator at it. And, while the alligator was sailing through the air, it just disappeared. And that was that. And, all my life, I've been, I've listened to shows like this. I've read so many books on the unexplained, and I've never, ever, ever, ever considered my own experience to be anything other than something weird, you know what I'm saying? Because I've never heard anything else like it. You know what I'm saying? It's like if you see a dog man right now, you can call up right now and 1 million people will be like, oh yeah, sure, I get you. Right. But if you see a demon, which I believe it was, there's a lot of people who will be like, meh, but you're 10 years old, you know what you know, and you know what you see, and you know what reality is, and you can just, it was so absolutely real to me, that I threw the damn alligator at it. I was just terrified by the thing,
So it's crouched down like Gollum in Lord of the Rings is always, kind of almost quadrupedal. He was squat down like that.
No, I mean squat in the sense of like short and fat.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so he was like 3.5 feet tall standing up.
Oh, good Lord, that's even worse. I don't know why, but that's worse.
No, this is what I'm telling you. It was so freaked me out. And it had like a pot belly, and you could see like the little like pre-belly, and you could see like the little fat folds over his knees and his elbows. Like he was like a fat little demon, you know what I'm saying?
Did he have anything on?
No, he didn't have anything on, and I didn't see
anything, right?
No, I didn't see any, like, identifying gender markers or anything like that. You know, and to be honest with you, now that you mentioned it, I really didn't see him too much from the waist down because I was just focused on his face, you know. I was looking at these bright, like, cat-like eyes and this enormously long mouth and, like, oblong head. It was just so bizarre to stare at, you know, and I honestly thought, like, you know, putting my head under the covers was gonna, like, deal with the situation, you know, and the fact that it was still there, like, literally haunts me to this day. Like, I'm like, it just sat there. It just sat there and until it waved to me, and I don't know why it waved to me, you know what I'm saying? I don't know if it was trying to get me out of bed. I don't know what the deal was.
Yeah, like you're ever gonna trust that little goddamn thing, right?
I mean, that's what, you know,
man.
90% of the time, right, across the board, whenever you talk about demonology and people seeing demons, right, 90% of the time it's a shadowy figure, right? Something described as something darker than night, right. You know, so in this case, you know, that's why I never put the term demon on it, you know, but, you know, after a while I begin to understand that, you know, it can take on any form it wants, you know what I'm saying?
And so how did you see it quite so well, like with this scaly skin and everything? Was there light from outside coming in, or? Yeah,
like I said, my dad had just gone to work, so it was about 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning.
Okay, I'm sorry. It was, okay, so it's dawn, basically. Lights streaming
the windows were all open, and it was broad daylight, you know.
That has left me speechless. I wasn't expecting it to look like that. I'm imagining the big lips, like we're 80s kids, so the movie Critters, right?
Yes, yes.
You mentioned your predisposition to have a lot of stuffed animals. Well, the whole reason, I think I've said this before, but the whole reason that I used to pile, an absolute shit ton, and that is a real measurement, you know this. A shit ton of all of my stuffed animals would go around me in like, some sort of a boundary because of that movie. Because some babysitter brought it over and it scared the absolute shit out of me. So stupid fur balls with just nothing but, like you said, like tiny teeth and big lips. Not that that's what yours look like, because that's unreal. See, and how many times have I said that there's a difference between going to look for something and then it showing up in your house, in your safe zone. That's awful.
In my bedroom, you know what I'm saying? And because I've never heard anyone talk about anything even close to this, you know, I mean, when I was growing up, when I got older and I started getting into some of this stuff, you know, and at 14, I became a paranormal, like, black hole, you know, so ever since 14, nothing. You know, no experiences, no UFO, no nothing, no nothing ever since 14 years old, you know.
And some may argue because of puberty. What's your thoughts on that?
And that's, you know, I've heard that argued a lot, that children have a predisposition for, you know, I don't know, maybe their brains, certain pathways are open and things like that. Mm-hmm. Also, when I was 14, that's the first time I smoked crack. And I think that when I got into drugs, that kind of, I don't know, I think it kind of put me out of touch with the cosmos, you know, in a way. Which is funny because, you know, the reason, you know, why I used drugs in the first place was to kind of put myself in touch with the cosmos. You know what I'm saying?
Right. No, and actually it's funny you say that, because I was just listening to, I think it was Soraya Askath on his Where Did the Road Go, about his own personal experiences. And he mentioned that, I don't know if he was saying it was himself, or he just thinks in general that even if you just drink alcohol, even just one drink, it kind of just shuts you down. You aren't that receptive anymore to anything. Yeah,
I mean, I could totally buy that, Shannon, because, you know, like I said, I mean, before the internet, I mean, I bought Barnes and Nobles out of every book they had on the unexplained. You know, I think back then it was the New Age section. And I just bought these volumes of books. And it was always the obscure stories that interested me the most, the one-offs, because that's, to me, was closest to what I had. So like the Dover Demon, Spring-Heeled Jack, those were the things that really interested me. The Flatwoods Monster, Bigfoot Champ, whatever. I'm interested in like the one-offs, So that's why, for my entire life, to be honest with you, Shannon, I have never, ever, ever told anyone that story until right now. Just because I don't think anybody would ever believe me,
Wow. Yeah, I've put down all the bullet points of that little guy, and he had a pot belly even. Why does it need to look like that? Why?
I don't know. It's such a trip, and it's like, when you see like a fat little guy with like a round pot belly, and he's even got like the little like pre-pot belly, like I don't even know how to explain it.
You know what's really gross is what is he eating?
Me.
Little 10-year-old boys in their mother's room where they think it's safe.
Right.
God.
His mouth was big enough that I could have fit in it. I'm telling you, it was an absolute trip.
Oh, Jon-Paul, you weren't kidding about that one. Yeah.
I gotta draw a picture of it someday because I gotta, just so I can show people, and I can say, hey, I saw this when I was younger, and they're gonna say, bullshit, because it's so far out,
Well, you at least need to sketch it for your book. My God, I haven't even mentioned, you're working on a book. Let's make sure to get that out before we get way too far down the rabbit hole. So let's go there next. Is the book that you are going to be working on. Now, I wanted to also put this out there because hopefully your email is going to blow up after this and your upcoming Facebook group that you're going to, or your page that you're going to create. Are you mostly looking for local stories that you can kind of go and investigate, or you just want it from all over, you don't care where it is?
Well, at first I was thinking local because I'd like to go and investigate, but to be honest with you, I would take stories from anywhere. It's just nice to be able to drive out somewhere, for a weekend and see the place for yourself. You know what I'm saying? Talk to the people because, when it comes to possession, we don't really hear about it. There's a couple of famous cases and some of them have been blown way out of proportion, but, allegedly, if they're still doing them, then people are being really quiet about it. You know what I'm saying? They're doing them, I'm not saying they're doing them every day, but, there could possibly be, a handful every year of sanctioned exorcisms and you just never hear about them. You know what I'm saying? That's what I'm interested in, I want to hear about the stuff that no one's talking about. You know what I'm saying? I want to put together that type of a book. You know what I'm saying? And I want to get rid of the old stereotype of, the Exorcist and Rosemary's Baby and those are the movies we have and that's what everybody believes possession is and we gotta kinda, I would like to get rid of that and shine a more, I guess academic light on it. You know what I'm saying? And hey, this could potentially be a real thing. Let's talk about it in an academic way,
So do you have a name for your book yet, or is it top secret? You totally don't even feel like you have to let it out now. I was just curious.
No, I actually don't have a name for it yet. I know that when I create the society, it'll be the Rhode Island Demonological Society. As far as the title of the book, I don't know. It depends on what kind of stories trickle in. If it's going to be I'm a big fan of Linda Godfrey, and I like her books. And her books are kind of broken up into stories. Okay, this is one guy and this is his story. And I like the idea of doing something like that. Joe Shit the Ragman in Connecticut's kid was possessed, and this is his story.
Right. And it does make it easier to read too. So.
Right. You can, before you go to bed, if you're so inclined, you can read a horrifying story of possession.
You can read about Jon-Paul's little fat gremlin guy.
Yeah,
with the big yellow eyes and the sharp teeth. Were his teeth in fact very sharp, or he just had a bunch of them in his mouth?
Yeah, I couldn't see them because it's funny you said critters because that's what they look like. You know how they have those little tiny sharp teeth?
Yeah.
That's what it looked like, except I couldn't see if they were sharp because they must have been longer than his mouth was open, if that makes any sense.
Goodness
I could
gracious,
see,
yeah.
like, hundreds of teeth in his mouth, and it was like, the fact that he smiled and waved at me in one of these little hand opening and closing waves was just like, it was obviously seducing. You know what I'm saying? That's what it was to me when I look back on it. You know what I'm saying? It was a seducing maneuver, like, hey, little boy, like what the fuck?
Be like, dude, you are in the wrong shell of an outfit for me to get out of bed right now, okay? You're really screwing this up right now. You need to go back and redo what you think I'm going to get the hell out of bed for. What do you think would have happened if you would have gone over to it? Would it have gone away just like when you threw the gator at it? Or, I mean, what was the purpose of him being there?
That's interesting, because I don't know. I think, first of all, I think trauma brings on, because I had undiagnosed PTSD at the time. And I think that when people suffer in a certain way, it kind of opens them up cosmologically, like the movie X-Men when, Professor X is in his Cerebro thing and he sees the lights of all the mutants in the world. Mm-hmm. I think that demons could kind of see certain lights of certain people and say, oh, this person is suffering more, or this person is so faithful over here. And I think they can identify in that type of way. And I think that particular demon possibly identified me as a small suffering child. And to be honest with you, I never been asked that question. So, I mean, had I gotten up and gone with him, I don't think you'd have ever heard of me. I think that would have been it. I think we would have just walked into the abyss, I'm assuming.
Right, because if he could show up there and if you join him or hold his hand or whatever the heck, we come up with, could he transverse that for you and do the same thing for you? It's very terrifying, actually.
It's horrifying.
So I'm sorry, I keep going back to this. It's just such a mind-blowing thing to have happen. Once he was gone, I mean, was he stinky? Did he leave a smell behind of sulfur? Or was there anything on the floor? Was he sweating? I don't know. I'm just trying to think of the fat little man on the floor.
He did look damp. He did look a little and I'm assuming it's because he was sweating. He was probably because he's a fat little demon and he's got I gotta make it over to the Capece house by 5:30.
Get back home by dinner time, man.
So I mean, he did have kind of a shine to him, but kind of like snakes do,
Right.
But there was no smell of sulfur or anything like that, and typically, sulfur, I know is associated with lots of paranormal type events, but typically smells in general, like incense and sage and stuff, keep demons away. So. Huh. I didn't smell anything, and I didn't see, any physical marks of him being there. There were no footprints. I just remember sitting in my bed looking where he was for like a solid amount of time. And then I don't think I got up and got my alligator. I think I left it on the floor.
Don't blame you there.
I went back. I didn't want to go near that area,
Oh my goodness. And to be clear, you didn't see this guy again, and you didn't really have any other experiences after that.
That was it. Like I said, from 10 to 14, that was my little experience and, the precognitive dreams and things like that. And then when I started using, I never, ever, ever had, an unexplained experience ever again. Like ever, to this day, actually, and I've been clean almost 5 years now, and, it hasn't come back, you know what I'm saying? But, I do try to protect myself, and we can get into this later, too. I also don't think that demons, per se, are attracted to me.
Even with the work that you do?
Well, I protect myself, you know what I'm saying? So I smudge my room constantly. I have holy water on hand. I have my rosary beads here on me. Actually, the demon tarot card deck that I have is sitting under an enormous crystal. Like I keep it under a crystal that I cleaned in the sunlight and in the moonlight, and I don't just put it in a drawer somewhere. I keep it under that I forget what the heck kind of crystal it is. It's one of those big white ones. But I keep it there, like, on purpose.
And that's its home. That's where it stays. Unless you're using it. Okay.
Right. And I drape, the accompanying book to the tarot cards is where I hang my rosary. So it's, I protect myself a lot, and I think that's part of the reason why I don't have the experiences I do. Plus, I think going through addiction and having seen so much hell, basically, I think that, in some ways, shape or form, they're like, this guy, we're not going to get him. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, whatever we throw at him, we're not going to get him. We had our chance, because, overall, and look, and this is particular to, Christians and Catholics, that's the degree. That's where I went to school. Providence College was it's a Dominican Catholic school, so that's where the focus came from. But overall, demons are attracted to, people who are more faithful. That's who they come to,
You mentioned just a little blurb, and I had something written down to bring this up, is that what do you get sick of hearing of as far as common misconceptions as far as demons and possessions go? Like, what's in the movies or in some of these other accounts that you're like, well, that's complete BS.
So, pretty much everything. The idea of the devil, being this red guy, that drives me nuts. The typical exorcism movie, drives me nuts. The idea of what demons, look like, or how they're portrayed, is cool, artistically speaking. But, it drives me nuts a little bit. Basically everything, you know what I'm saying? Cause it's a lot more, it's a lot scarier, it's scary as shit the way it is. You know what I'm saying? You don't need to go overboard with things. But what drives me crazy the most is basically the concept of hell and the idea of demons. And that there are people out there that believe that, like, in the center of the earth, there's a place called hell, and that's where these demons live. And that drives me crazy that people actually believe that. You know what I'm saying? And that's probably number one. So
what do you have to say to those people?
So basically there's two ideas in theology. One is that, so I have to get into some technical terms. Eschatology is basically the study of the end times. And the Gospel of Luke was written in a state of realized eschatology. So Luke believed that he was living during the end times. So there's this kind of conflict between theologians. Some, I don't know, 50-50, whatever. Some think that the demons are here on earth with us. And they're waiting, for Christ to return in the final judgment before they're banished to hell. And there's evidence of that in the Bible. And some people believe, no, they're already trapped in the fiery pits of hell. When Christ comes, they're going to resurface and there's going to be a battle and all this other stuff, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I don't know why they would resurface. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So, a lot of that stuff comes from Dante's Divine Comedy, right? So, the whole Western idea of hell, comes from Dante, basically. It's Inferno. And, that's, I don't know, that's like someone finding Lord of the Rings 200, 300, 400, 400 years from now and saying like, I don't know, and describing, at some island like Middle Earth, and saying like, oh my God, this was Middle Earth back in the day. It was a poem, you know what I'm saying? It's nothing to do with reality of the devils and demons. You know what I'm saying? It was Dante's ideas about what hell would be like. And because he was such a great poet, it comes across amazing, the river Styx and Charon and all these names of demons and all these layers and all this fantastic stuff. And I think that's been inbred, like, into Catholic culture now, like been adopted in a way. And that's just not the case. You know what I'm saying? Every theologian, every professor that I've ever had has, basically agreed with that like there isn't a place in the middle of the planet, that with stoking the pits of hell where people are being whipped by demons with wings, and like that doesn't exist.
What's the movie with Keanu Reeves?
Constantine.
Love that movie. Great movie, but I'm sure that you watch it and you're like, no. Mm-mm.
Actually, the one thing that I thought was cool in that movie was when the angel came and she was androgynous. I thought that they were good on. I was like, all right, they got that right.
Yeah. Okay, so then that little pudgy dude that was in your mom and dad's room and you saw when you were 10. So where did that come from? If we're going to go ahead and just label that a demon, we'll just assume, where did he come from then?
So in my studies, it seems to me, and I try really hard not to use the word I believe, right? Because once you start saying I believe, you start to get into really muddy areas. Because people can believe whatever they want. And, I don't really like using the word I believe. So from what I've researched, right, from what I've read, demons exist in the world, in an invisible, alternate state. Lots of people who have seen them, so-called, describe them as manifesting themselves from the matter around them. So, like, if you could imagine, like a mini black hole swirling into, like a black figure, you know what I'm saying? So, I more or less believe that they're among us, there's certainly evidence in, books that are written that they're, people, that, they can be just look like you and I, you know what I'm saying? Certainly certain animals, things like that. So I believe that they're earthbound in a sense. That's the simplest answer is they're earthbound. They're earthbound fallen angels is what they are.
One of the parts in your email was across the board, these sightings are consistent with the shadow people. People always talk about demons materializing into human-like figures that are blacker than night. Also, the demon can appear as a black cat, a goat, a dog, maybe even an upright walking one, hint, hint, right, the dog man, or a pig, to name a few. Now, this is the cool part here. There is always something off about the shadow creature, demon person. It may have red eyes, or a human form could be perfect minus a head, or a cat with 3 legs. So my question was, after reading that, is it imperfect on purpose, or is that their version of a glitch in the Matrix that didn't get transferred over properly?
Yeah, so I think there's 2 ways of looking at that. One, I think that, you can, I think that if you look at it as intentional, you could perhaps say that it's God intervening in a way, so, okay, that's God giving us a clue that this thing isn't quite right. You know what I'm saying? So it doesn't quite have the ability to make an exact copy of, say, a black cat, or a human figure, The other thing too is that it's just friggin' terrifying, right? And, like you see a figure you see a figure without a head, like that's terrifying. If I see a black cat with 3 legs, that's kind of freaky if it runs out in front of me. Even pigs freak me out, especially if I saw like a shadow pig. I can't even imagine how horrifying that would be.
Dude, pigs can be mean. I've always wanted a pig as a pet, but you cross the wrong one and you're gonna lose some limbs and fingers and calves. Yeah. You're some tasty meat to them. They're like, payback's a bitch.
It's true. They'll eat you.
So I wonder then if, I keep going back to the pudgy little guy. I'm sorry, but I wonder if then in a way he looked so hideous because it was God intervening, and he's like, okay, well, obviously, little man, you wanted to look like this to scare Jon-Paul, but no, I'm going to make sure you look absolutely effing terrifying, and he's not going with you.
So, that's exactly one way of looking at it. And the other way is that they're just fucking horrifying.
Yeah, and that is what they are, which is actually quite awful.
Right. So, if you would think of like, okay, what is, a true demonic form? And, the stuff that I've read, you've heard of Padre Pio, of course, the famous hypnotist. He wrote a bunch of letters when he was being assailed by demons. And, not nightmares. I'm talking like he was in his cell and he would write letters talking about how demons would show up at night, like in full form, in full horrific form, and literally beat the shit out of him. Literally. And sometimes they would appear as attractive women and try to get him to break his, oath of, celibacy and things like that. And sometimes they would just appear as, straight demons, So yeah, I mean, as to why, they're off a little bit, I think that that's just in their nature. I think that they're just off, from the very beginning they were rebels, you know what I'm saying? So, they're off and they're scary.
So are these things fallen something else's? Are they fallen angels, or they just are what they are?
No, theologically speaking, they're fallen angels, right? 2/3 of the heavenly host fell, with Lucifer. So Lucifer and Satan are the same thing. Satan is the main guy. Lucifer was more or less his angelic name, and the name he got as he fell, because Lucifer means light bringer. And, so as he fell, he became Satan. And, 1/3 of the heavenly host fell with him. Now, if you bear with me a second, because this is really, really friggin' cool, and I have it earmarked in my book. There was a guy, Despina, he was a theologian. He actually put a number on the amount of demons that fell. And I just don't know if I can find it in my book right now. Yeah. So the fallen angels, right? There's a bunch of dictionaries out there. There's a bunch of old books on angels and demons and things like that. And this particular guy, Despina, when talking about the heavenly host, rebelling against God, basically Satan or Lucifer at the time, wasn't, I don't know if he didn't agree with God or if he just wasn't happy with the situation. He wasn't happy with his place, maybe. And then these other, guys kind of left with him, kind of like Jerry Maguire, who's coming with me type deal. So, Despina says, quote, 133,306,668. Right? So you think of that, right? And you say, why the fuck is that number so specific? You know what I'm saying? Like, how does this guy come up with that number? It's so specific. Like, you don't even know what to say.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It's like, to me, that's mind blowing. To me, you know what I'm saying? It's like, okay, they're angels at one point in their life, right? And they still retain all their abilities as demons. So they have knowledge and they have wisdom, and, I think that's why current, Satanists who are, get a bad rap, really, they're just all about themselves, and taking care of themselves, and, they seek ancient knowledge through a different path, and I'm not a Satanist, but, I guess I'm an apologetic, of the Satanists. Yeah. But they're fallen angels, they retained all of their knowledge and they retained their, powers, basically. But they're here on Earth, and, they're divided into classes, they're divided into different types and all this other stuff. Every other podcast I've listened to likes to talk about, demons in particular and which one does what. And like I said, lots of that stuff comes from the, Malleus Maleficarum, which is an old book that was written, but basically listed a bunch of demons and made up a bunch of shit about what they did.
It was made up, though.
Yeah, I believe it was. Yes, it definitely was. It was just an idea of like, hell has to have a structure and this is the way it is. But as far as, the names and things like that, I don't know. You know what I'm saying? As a theologian, I'm very skeptical. But as far as classes of demons and classes of angels, I believe that's a real thing. Skimming through my notes right now, and I want to actually go through them with you, because, according to Catholic theology, angels are ranked as follows. So you have the seraphim, the cherubim, the thrones, the dominions, the virtues, the powers, the principalities, and the archangels. So there's different levels of angelic beings, right? And there's scripture to support this, and there's also, this is why, the big difference between Catholicism and everything else is that, everything else is basically Bible-only theology, So with Catholicism, you get to reach out into, Thomas Aquinas and St. Augustine and places like that, and you get to go for extra information, and that's where a lot of this extra information comes from, So, these guys went on and they read the Bible and they said, well, it makes sense that they were ordered in a way, and, so the angels are ordered in that way. The demons are also ordered, in a similar way. And what we have are the fates, the poltergeists, the incubi and succubi, the hordes, the familiars, the nightmares, and the fertility demons. Mm. And, I don't think that's a power ranking. The angelic one is. The seraphim all the way down to the archangels, that's a ranking of, like, power, one after the other. But as far as the demons go, I don't think that's a hierarchy, more or less. Whereas with the angels do have a hierarchy. And I think that's just inherently because they're demons and, like, they would never form a hierarchy.
So that's just maybe either what they do or how they manifest or what they look like. I mean, obviously the incubus and the succubus, we know the difference between those two. So it's they have different victims. Right.
So you see, because you're right, you're familiar with them, right? So then you have poltergeists, right, which are a form of, that's like when a house is, possessed, basically. Mm-hmm. That's the phenomenon that exists in there. And the fertility demons are familiars, usually associated with witchcraft. Witches are said to have familiars, usually animal forms. Mm. What is it? The nightmares are basically nightmares. There's also deceptive demons, which generally focus on older individuals, and for some reason. There are also what's called clean demons, which are demons that exclusively go after clergy, which I thought was pretty interesting.
That is fascinating. I've never heard that. They're called clean demons.
Yeah, because they go after people who are clean. And that brings me to an interesting point. The people, who are in clergy, and people who are evangelizing, they're at the highest risk of possession because of the work that they do. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? So, the idea is the devil wants to stop the promulgation of Catholicism and Christianity. So he attacks people like Padre Pio, you know what I'm saying? Or, certain priests with these so-called clean demons, And the antithesis to that is, if you're an atheist and you don't believe in God, then the devil has you anyway. So you're not going to get possessed. Which raises the question, if you've never been possessed, what does that mean? You know what I'm saying?
You're a real shithead.
It's terrifying, right?
It is. It goes so deep. This damn rabbit hole, I tell you. I love it though. So
I know.
Those clean demons, see, I love doing the show because I learn something every single time. I'm making notes like a mad woman, by the way. So, Jon-Paul, are you going to be doing work like that? Is one of your goals, and I don't know how long it takes, I don't know the process of it, but is one of your goals, you write the book and maybe someday you can do exorcisms or take care of demons?
So anybody can do an exorcism. It's actually in the Vatican Council. It's part of Roman law. If necessary, anybody can do an exorcism. So you could do one if you had to. You wouldn't need holy water or anything. And that's not, that's not your typical, that's not perfect possession. We're talking like a minor possession or maybe a poltergeist activity. Technically anybody could do this. As far as me wanting to venture out into that area, I don't think that's what I want to do. I think I'd like to stay into the academic realm like I said, identify certain cases that have never been talked about before and possibly try to attach a particular demon to that case. Not a name, not saying like, oh, this was Astaroth that defiled this young woman. No, but say like, by the evidence of this case, this was a clean demon. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So, you have the story and then you have the theological analysis after the story. That's how I see the book panning out. But as far as me doing exorcisms, I would like to see one. I'm hoping, that at some point someone would invite me along. But I don't want to do one. I hope I never have to. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you mentioned and this is terrifying, by the way. I've never heard this number. Your number of the fallen, the 133 million plus, right? So this ties into a question that one of our listeners posed today when I posted that you were coming on. Tina Senna, this is her second question. I'm going to skip the first one. So you've already answered it, basically. Is there only a certain amount of demons, and are all of them already named?
So yeah, there are already a certain amount of demons. And yeah, they would all have names.
So so the 133 million, they do have names. Maybe we just don't know them yet, right?
Right. And it's possible that some of the names they've given them, like Baal and, Astaroth and all these other weird names, it's possible that they could be some of their names, that some of this knowledge could have been passed down. But yeah, so they can't reproduce, demons. You know what I'm saying? Like angels can't reproduce. Mm-hmm. Now there is some conjecture that, like through incubi and succubi can kind of steal, the sexual essence of a man or a woman and create from that. But I don't know what that creates. You know what I'm saying? That's terrifying.
Maybe that was what was in your room. That is terrifying.
Right. Like what are you making? You know what I'm saying? I mean, people talk about UFOs abducting people and doing weird research.
I'll take that. Give me the probe. Oh God, I'm gonna get email about that. That's okay though, because it's funny.
Right. Give me the probe. Yeah. I don't want the demons,
Forget the demons. Give me the aliens.
Right.
See, but that's a whole nother episode, right? Like, is it all tied in, and the whole abduction scenario versus it's such a rabbit hole. It's insane.
Right, and that's why, when I mentioned to you the thing about the association with the shadow people, there's such a phenomenon right now going on about shadow men, right? Mm-hmm. And I know you've had an experience yourself.
Yeah.
And 90% of the time, this is how demons are described. So, I'm saying to myself, like, well, it makes sense. To me, it makes sense. If there's a rise in the number of, people seeing demons, it's either A, because we're thinking about it, right? And we're creating that, global consciousness and awareness. Or B, because maybe we are closing in on the end times. I don't know, that there seems to be a lot more sightings. Also, too, social media, there's a lot more ways to share your story now, and there's, a lot of people, you don't really get laughed out of the room now when you talk about it, so people are more willing to talk about it. But I do, tend to think, that even things like, even I think Dogman, it potentially is a demon. I mean, when you think about it, I listen to Vic Show. I love Vic Show, and his they're always black. I mean, they're not always black, but I think half of the people on there are full of shit. But I think he does have some legitimate, guests on there that have actually seen these things, and usually they're black. Some of them have even described them being blacker than night. So yeah, I mean, I guess, they're walking the earth.
I mean, I have thought about that because, and that I've described the same thing. The shadow people I saw were just the darkest cut out from the deepest, darkest night, no stars, and then they were still darker than that. Right. But how much easier would it have been that I would have seen 4 dogmen, which is not a usual thing, I know. Don't start me with the emails you never see 4. I know. I'm just saying, for argument's sake, there were 4 dogmen running in the forest that day. It could be. I've never been able to label those, and I never will be able to label those things.
Exactly. You know, and that's why, that's why you say it's such a rabbit hole, you know, because in my heart, I gotta believe that it's all connected somehow.
Right.
And, you know, some people, you know, believe that it's, you know, it's time slips. It's just straight up time slips and interdimensional rifts, and things are popping in and popping out of reality. You know, and, you know, I happen to think that it's more real than that, you know, that they're physical in a way. They're here. And they're among us. And, you know, the Bible makes references to it. And like, look, I'm not gonna go off. I don't go to church. I'm not a Catholic. I've never been baptized. You know, I fell into theology just as a result of studying philosophy. So it's not like I'm a Bible thumper over here, but, you know, there's something to be said about the damn book. You know, it talks about him walking the earth. You know, the devil's gonna walk the earth like a lion, you know, and then he's gonna eat people, you know, and, shit. What more do you have to say?
This sounds so morbid, but part of me, because the show means a lot to me, you know, always going for the questions.
Yeah.
Or going for the answers, I should say, but you just get more questions, basically. But it means a lot to me, and I'm so involved with this whole thing that part of me, and again, this is so morbid, I'm going to get so much shit for this, but part of me is like, end times, bring it. Then at least we'll like kind of figure some shit out, and we'll see some cool and terrifying things, and then hey, it'll be over. I don't know what to say.
I'm all for it.
But we could see everything, right? Like it'll all be there for us, and there will be no more questions.
Right. And I feel the exact same way. You know, it's like, you know, it's funny because it goes back to the original sin, right? The knowledge, you know, you eat, and then you eat from that tree of life, that tree of knowledge, right? And that's still embedded in us today, right? We want to know. I want to see it. I want to know it all, you know, and even if that means that the apocalypse has to happen, you know, at least I'll know. Exactly. You know what I'm saying?
That's exactly how I feel. And it sounds so morbid. I'm sure to some they're like, oh my God, how can you say that? But I'm like, I really do mean that.
No, I couldn't agree more with you, to be honest with you. You know, and if something like that were to happen, you know, I think ultimately that most of us would end up on the good end of things.
Right.
You know, so, you know, when you talk about theology, priests don't study theology, right? They study divination. They have master's degrees in divinity. Basically, they go to school to learn how to do mass and to perform rituals and things like that. So, you know, when people talk to their priests about demonology, they're not getting adequate advice and answers.
I never thought about that.
Yeah, you know, the average priest doesn't study theology. You know, well, one of my cousins is a priest, and he's like, every time we have a conversation, he's like, wow, I haven't done theology in such a long time. And even when I was in school, you know, there were nuns sitting next to me, and there were priests from Australia, and, you know, they were, you know, just trying to further their knowledge of, you know, theology, because they don't teach them that as much. It's more divinity, you know, it's more, you know, your calling, you're here to do this work, and here's how to perform these miracles, so to speak.
So then aren't you in more danger than a priest that does divination?
I don't know, because priests evangelize, you know, they're like up there on the pulpit and they're spreading the word and they're converting people, you know, which would be what, you know, the devil would be, he doesn't want that to happen. Christians, no way. Right. You know, so go after the people that are making more Christians, you know.
That's interesting. So what about when your book finally comes out then, Jon-Paul? Or then are you a bigger target?
Possibly. But I think because I'll be shining the light on the reality of demonology as opposed to promulgating Christianity and God, I don't know, you know. To be honest with you, I guess this is morbid too. I don't think I'd mind being the target, you know, and I can't believe I just said that out loud sitting next to a deck of tarot cards full of these, you know. But, you know, if, like I said, you know, aside from that one confirmation experience when I was 10 years old, like I haven't seen anything in like, you know, 26 years, you know. Like, I want to know, if a shadow person pops up in my room, like, I'm getting out of bed and I'm talking, I'm going for it,
Dude, you sound just like me, don't you? Haven't I? How long have I been saying that? I'm like, how long has it been since I've had the shit scared right out of me? Let's do this.
Exactly. Never happens. Never.
I know.
I live in Rhode Island, right? There's no dog man in Rhode Island. You know what I'm saying? I mean, according to Vic, there is. He says they've been seen in every state, according to his show. I mean, come on. You know what I'm saying?
See, but that's tricky, because you did mention that earlier with the whole, is it, more people are on the internet, but Rhode Island is one of the more sparsely populated areas, so there's no one there to see the damn things, right? So it's kind of that double-edged sword there.
It's true, and to be honest with you, I do live in, like, the more wooded area of the state, which connects to a state forest. Yeah, and it connects to a Connecticut state forest. I'm on the Connecticut border, so, yeah, you could basically go from my house to the only casino we have over here, the Foxwoods Casino in Connecticut, which is, like, about an hour away. You could basically go from my house to there through the woods without ever hitting a road, so there's a lot of woods here,
Yeah, it's camping time, man.
Ancient woods too, and I'm not like an hour away from the, what the heck is it? The triangle there.
Oh yeah, Bridgewater
Triangle, yeah.
That was a creepy place, man. I was only there during the day, but that was a creepy little place.
Where did you go?
I was trying to go to, what the hell is wrong with my brain today? I have nothing for names today.
The
Hockomock, yes. I was going to say the swamp thing. God.
Yeah.
Boy, I'm on point tonight. I'm sorry. So yeah, Hockomock, drove around there. I mean, it was nice weather. It was decent weather, no clouds, sun's shining, and creepy place. And it was during the day. I had no chance to actually camp out there or sleep out there, unfortunately. But talk about some really strange goings on out there. Yeah.
That place is. I watched that documentary. Did you watch the documentary?
Which one?
The Bridgewater Triangle.
Was it on like travel or history? I think I saw that one.
No, I think it's on Amazon.
Oh.
It might be the same one, but it's great because at one point they're interviewing this guy in the woods, and he's mentioning the wampum belt from the Native American there. What was the war? King Philip's War, and how they stole the wampum belt, and that's why they think the land is cursed. And he said something about it, and then all of a sudden, like, the lights cut off. And they're like, whoa, that was creepy. We mentioned the wampum belt and the lights cut off. And on camera, you can hear the guy puts in a new battery and it goes dead immediately again, a brand new battery.
That's awesome.
It was really cool, like right on camera, and that's why I hadn't been to the Hockomock Swamp, but I did go to King Philip's, Anawan Rock, where King Philip's allegedly died. It was creepy. I took some pictures. It's just a big rock on Route 44, But for me, I would be interested in the Freetown Fall River Forest there, where the satanic activity takes place. I would like to go down there and do some investigations at some point. But I'm not going without my Glock 9.
Oh, bless your heart. You have a 9 as well. So do I. All the anti-gun toters can email me. I don't care. But God bless the 9s. Yeah. Hollow Point all day. Thank you very much.
I'm not going into these demon-worshipping infested woods without packing heat.
That's the place that I was driving around the most, and I took the most photos. It was Freetown. I didn't realize that was so heavy in the satanic worship side of things, because there was all these weird, like, open pit wells and, surrounded by rocks. I know that was for some whatever reason. I don't know. But the place was effing creepy, and I wasn't even there in the middle of the night. I honestly, and I can sleep in some creepy damn places. I've done it a lot, but I can honestly say that if I was out there at night, I definitely want to be armed. I really wouldn't. I normally would be okay doing things alone, but I don't think I'd be okay there all night alone.
No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't stay out there alone. Not at all. Not even close.
That place is hardcore, dude. Yeah. All about the 9s out at that place. There was random cars, parked. And I know that there's other things going on, obviously, that have nothing to do with anything paranormal. But even just for the people, bring your 9.
Yeah. So there's I don't know, where you want to go from here, because I know you said you had only had, about an hour and a half to kill, but there's,
here's what I'm sorry to interrupt you. Let's go here.
Yeah.
And then don't forget your point, whatever you're about to say, if you have to jot it down, because I know it looks like just my mind just threw up all over papers when I'm doing these interviews. I'm sorry.
No,
but
me
before
too.
I forget this, so let's get the bus out, right? We're going to get the bus out, and we're going to just completely throw a story that makes you want to vomit right under the bus. Something that you are so freaking sick of hearing about, that you, through all of your studies, and you've done a lot. You have a master's degree in this. What is a story that is out there that you are just so freaking sick of hearing about because the facts are just not right?
It's either the Amityville Horror or the Exorcism, the movie The Exorcism.
Okay.
So, Ed and Lorraine Warren I am extremely skeptical of them. The book that they read in seminary, that's the book that I've read. It's just called Demonology. There's 3 volumes, and that's what they give the priests to read while they're at seminary. But they've also wrote a book, the Warrens, called The Demonologist. And, I don't know, whenever they're involved with something that it smells. And then they have all these movies made of stuff, and, anything that gets made into a movie chaps my ass, like you wouldn't believe.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So The Exorcism, right? I was listening to a podcast recently, and they were talking about it, and they got the whole thing wrong. You know what I'm saying? And lots of people do. You know what I'm saying? And I'll set the record straight right now. I'll tell you exactly how that came to be. Douglas D. I want to say it was in the 1940s. He's a Lutheran boy, which is interesting because 80% of possessions are female. So good luck to you.
Right.
Bring 1949.
I know people. I know you. I know other folks. So bring it.
That's true. We'll do an exorcism over.
Yeah,
Skype.
your first one will be me. There you go.
So, D.C., in a suburb of Washington, D.C., 1949, 13-year-old boy, Douglas D., he was a Lutheran, and he became possessed. And there was 41 witnesses to this kid's possession. And the Lutheran ministers couldn't do anything about it. But there was, 41 people confirmed that they saw this kid do, really, really strange things, some of the stereotypical stuff is true, that speaking in tongues and deep voices and languages and contorting of the bodies and stuff. And that's all documented, from the very beginning, so that stuff is accurate, but, eventually they had to call in, Catholic priests, and, it took 30 attempts over 6 months to exorcise this kid of his demon. Now, this was a case of what's called perfect possession, right? So there are 2 types of possession. There is just imperfect and perfect. Imperfect possession is like almost 100% you're gone. Like you got no spirit. There's an ember. With perfect possession, the only way you can come back is through divine intervention. So that's basically what saved this kid Douglas. God is the only one that can bring you back from perfect possession, But, leading up to his possession, you had various stages, because there are stages. People just don't become possessed. There's an obsession phase, there's an oppression phase, there's a temptation phase. The oppression phase it can be psychological, it can be physical. That's usually when they show their form. But this kid, this young man, was possessed in the 40s. I believe it was 49. And, later on in life, he goes to Georgetown University, where he meets William Peter Blatty. And he tells him his story, and Blatty writes the book.
I mean, how does it get from there to this massive movie that is so messed up?
I think it's just because it was a good movie, to be honest with you. And it was the first one of it. I mean, really, it was a good movie, and it was the first one of its kind that really depicted, you know, I mean, it was somewhat accurate as far as demonic possession. I mean, I'm not talking about spinning heads, but, you know, all the accounts I read about, usually the victim of the possession is like their own worst enemy. They beat the shit out of themselves.
Right.
You know, the arching of backs and the bulging of, you know, in the throat, things like that are all, you know, common signs, you know, speaking different languages, different voices, you know, house poltergeist, phenomenon in the house. You know, so I think, you know, the elements that were true in that movie, obviously because you know, Blatty had some insight because he knew this kid Douglas, you know, and he was able to explain to him what had happened. And now I don't know if he remembered the whole thing, you know, which I think he may have. He could have been stuck inside of his body watching this whole thing happen. Or it was described to him by the 41 people who witnessed it, you know, and the priest who did the exorcism. But I think because there were certain elements of that film that were accurate, that's why it got so popular, and that's why it got so much press, and that's why everyone today thinks that's exactly what it's about, you know.
Can people actually levitate or climb walls or get onto the ceiling and stay there?
Climbing walls I haven't heard of, but levitation I have heard of.
That's fascinating.
Tell me about it.
I mean, to actually see that.
Yeah, I mean, you know, so this is the interesting part. You've heard of Malachi Martin, right?
Yes.
So he wrote a book, or someone wrote a book on him called Hostage to the Devil, which they recently made into a documentary. And he used to travel around and do exorcisms, right? I have no idea how many he did. The people who he exorcised, they don't know if they're talking about it. You know what I'm saying? You know, and he had helpers. He had some guy helping him. It's like, what the fuck did they see?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I want to know. I don't want to just be, you know, told by Hollywood what happens. Like, I want to see, like, you know, I mean, according to, you know, like I said, the theologians that have studied this over the years, you know, yeah, levitations happen. You know, yeah, people's bodies contort. Weird shit freaking goes on. You know, the devil's, you know, it's not the devil himself, but the demon inside of you he's trying to mess you up. You know, his ultimate goal is to get your soul. You know, that's his ultimate goal is death.
So you're saying that someone else wrote a book about him, but he's never actually come out and just exposed everything that he's seen?
I don't think he has. So I didn't read the book, but I watched the documentary, and he was in the documentary and he was talking about possession and some of the things that he had witnessed over the years. But as far as I know, and I could be wrong, there's no compendium of all the exorcisms he's done.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
What? That would be fascinating to get.
That's what I'm talking about. You know, that's my goal. That's why I want to find these people who have been exorcised, who have never told anyone, you know, and keep them anonymous and find out what really goes on when this happens, you know, like the temptation phase, like were you aware of it? Did you know what was going on? You know, obsession, you know, were you aware? Oppression, you know, that oppression is the stage where the demon usually reveals themselves in the form of a shadow person, you know. What did you think was going on at that point? You know, what did it, you know, I mean, there's so many questions to be asked.
Well, see, and that's interesting because if you get the book out and it can become more mainstream, maybe it can be more of a preventative measure before it gets to the oppression and possession phase.
Yeah, that's actually, I never thought of that because, you know, if you can see it coming, you know, and they talk about this too, you know, usually, like a simple prayer, you know, of devotion, can stop a whole thing. You know what I'm saying?
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, not a perfect possession, but, right. You know, if you feel like the temptation is, you know, born of an evil spirit, you know, some type of a salvation prayer, you know, can kind of stop the whole thing in its tracks, you know, and, yeah.
Sorry. So what if you have a perfect possession and then you have everybody knows that you are possessed, and you get the church will go through the sanctions, and you have the A-OK. Are there maybe they just aren't, and we don't know about them. They aren't documented, but are there failed exorcisms, and what happens to those people?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm assuming that the failed exorcisms result in death and the soul going to Satan, which is the ultimate goal. If that's what you believe. Certainly I think we've all heard stories of, people with, mental illness being exorcised, and like things going horribly wrong because this person is just mentally ill. They're not possessed. You know what I'm saying? And people can be strapped to the bed and killed by accident. And, I'm certainly things have happened like that over the years throughout the course of history. But, it's funny. You don't hear about the people who die. You only hear about the people who live. So that would be really interesting actually to find a list of people who died of demonic possession,
Yeah, I just wonder if such a thing exists somewhere in some dusty room.
It's got to. It's got to. If they were involved in an exorcism, right? I mean, if Joe Shit the Rag Man is, who's, begging for change on the corner, and I'm not, discriminating. I used to beg for change on the corner for dope, if he gets possessed by a demon and dies, nobody knows it, you know what I'm saying? But if there was an actual sanctioned exorcism and the person died, how do you explain that to the cops? How do you explain that to anybody?
Right.
You gotta keep a record of that.
The cops see priests come into the house and they're like, oh no, just a heart attack, right? It's just... Right.
Why is he tied up? Oh, don't worry about that.
Yeah.
Or, the other theory is no one has ever died from a demonic possession. That is a theory.
Right. Could be. Absolutely.
It's possible. Or unless, who knows, missing 411, right? I don't know.
I know, right? That damn rabbit hole. We're just digging and digging and digging. Oh, I love this. All right, so I don't want to get too far away from all this work that you're putting in after you've already done your master's and you're writing this book now. So, I really like this as well, is to make your project different, you are going for primary sources, like you said. You want to try to find the people that have gone through it, and you can talk to them, and hopefully you can, like you said, you can drive to them. You would prefer the local stories. But let's just, like I say, just throw that fishing line out there and see what you get, because this is still a work in progress. Exactly. Yeah, no, I'll definitely, give out my email address at the end. Because if I could talk to anybody, and just, vet someone, you can usually, I get a pretty good judge of character. And, I just want to learn more about this stuff and figure out, what happened and how it happened and why it happened, but yeah, this is, to me, Shannon, this is doing theology, right? So, and we mentioned it at the beginning. Demonology falls under spiritual theology, which is also where moral theology is found. So basically, when I was at school, I focused on moral theology. So moral theology and demonology kind of coexist together, and you can see why. It's choices, right? Decision making, and our intentions. Those are the things that get us in trouble or help us out. So those two things they fall into the realm of spiritual theology, and that's just happened to be my area of study. So this is doing theology. It's going out there. It's finding primary sources. I don't want to read someone's book about demons. I don't want to hear their version. I want to go talk to the actual person. Well, see, and I like the fact that you're like, I want the unreported, never talked about stories. I want to find new stuff. Even if it happened 20 years ago, maybe they never talked about it. That's always a possibility. I
think that happens a lot. One of the biggest things that people say nowadays about, how Dogman all of a sudden it's a thing and it came out of nowhere. That's kind of bullshit, because whenever I listen to the stories, it's they're always from 30 years ago.
Right.
You know, it's like they just started talking about it now because like someone brought it up. So, I'm hoping it's a similar pattern, like, oh yeah, I had a run in, and, actually it's funny because Douglas D, the kid who was, possessed, in Mount Rainier, Washington, he was possessed by playing with a Ouija board. Like, that's true. You know what I'm saying? Demons have to be invited somehow into your life.
So do you have a Ouija board at your house?
No fucking way.
You're like, I do enough with this stuff. I don't need to just open the front door. You're like, I'll crack the window, but not open the front door, right?
Exactly. I mean, like, yeah. I mean, the Ouija board thing freaked me right out.
Oh my goodness. See, these are more notes and I promise you, this is only part one because I had other things written down.
Well, good, because the whole history of demonology is worth talking about.
I had all these, this is only part one, believe me. In fact, I'll probably get you back on in just a few weeks. Samantha Lawson is another listener, and condolences to her because she said she just lost her husband. But she says that she has thought about trying to contact him, but her question was, could that possibly open a doorway to let other things in?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the deal. You never know what you're talking to. And because demons are naturally so tricky that's something that they would do. You know what I'm saying? You would, and my heart goes out to the woman. But, you gotta kind of let go, I think, at some point because, reaching into places, like I said, when I sent you that email, right? When we were talking about the cards, you can't do anything out of morbid curiosity.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, I guess I believe, my mom had a friend that was psychic once, but basically he was just really good at reading tarot cards, and in that sense, I think that, there's something that there's not a morbid curiosity there. And, Thomas Aquinas believed, and I believe this too, it's all about your intentions. It's all about your intentions. If you sit down and you really honestly, openly want to, genuinely, and I believe she probably would, this person, want to speak to someone who's passed, then your intentions are pure, but the individual conducting the ritual, you have no idea who or how or what their inclinations are. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I don't know who does this stuff. I've never been to a palm reader or someone who could, do this stuff, or I've never attempted to talk to someone who's deceased on a Ouija board, just because as soon as you roll back that veil, it's all there. It's like, it's all there, and there are so many cases of you think of that, the whole I am Zozo phenomenon, it's like, that thing was masquerading as a million different things before it finally revealed itself as something else. And in fact, I think that would make things worse, personally. If I had lost someone I loved and I went, and I tried to communicate with them, through the other side of the veil, and I end up getting a demon, that just makes things fucking way worse. Because now I'm like, what, is he with the demon? Is it what's going on? Why did this happen to me? You know what I'm saying? I get the impulse. I definitely do. And I get the motive, and I'm sure it's pure. But, whenever you mess with this stuff, just talking about it, Shannon, I have holy water on my desk. I'm not shitting you. Just talking about this stuff makes me nervous.
Yeah, so even with the purest intentions, you sit down at something like a Ouija board and, period, you just don't know what you're going to get.
Right. I think because your intentions are pure, you're not going to get possessed.
Right.
But, a demon could come along and be like, hey, my name is so-and-so, and let me in, or, go answer the front door, and then you hear a knock on the door, some freaky shit like that, It's just, if it's true, right? And I want to pose this to you because there was a guy, Blaise Pascal. He was a 17th century mathematician / theologian, and he was famous for coming up with what's called the wager argument. And the wager argument converted people to Christianity by the masses because he basically said it's better to believe and have it not be true than to not believe and have it all be true. And, you know, I think that if you start messing around with some of this stuff and you get the inkling that maybe it is true, like, your whole world could be flipped upside down. Right. You know what I'm saying? And like, it could have tremendous consequences. And I'm not even saying possession wise. You know what I'm saying? Like, people who have seen a dog man, you know what I'm saying? Like, they're never the same again. Like, even if they've seen it once out of the corner of their eye eating some roadkill, like, their lives are different after that. So, I don't know if any of that made sense.
Yeah, no, I'm just processing because I'm just thinking of, you know, how many folks, and I myself, when I was younger, we had Ouija boards. I even had one that I'm sure you've heard me say, I found it in the desert and was super active board. And the one that we bought brand new, I mean, you know, is that just my own mind coming up with that? Because I'm like, ooh, it's creepy, or because it came, you know, from the desert. I mean, right. I don't know. But
I mean, if you think that, you know, if you realize that demons are walking the earth with us, they're just invisible or they're in disguise, then, you know, like I said, if you're over there messing around and your mind is open to something, you know, existential, you know, or something other, then you may shine like a beacon to them. You know what I'm saying? And then maybe like, oh, Shannon's messing around with a Ouija board. You know, let's go see what she's up to.
I'm not going to say that I don't get frustrated though, because not only, you know, once or twice a week do I talk about this kind of stuff with folks like you, but every single day I'm reading something, I'm taking notes on something, and I'm like, well, what the hell, man? I'm right here. Let's do something. Freak me out.
Yeah. But I tell you, I feel the same way. Like, I mean, I always downplayed seeing that little critter when I was 10 years old. Mm-hmm. Just because I've never seen anything since, you know what I'm saying? I've always said, you know, it was just something stupid. It was my imagination, you know, but I wasn't sleeping. I just crawled in the bed for 10 seconds and I popped back up and it was there. You know what I'm saying? And I hadn't seen the movie Gremlins. There was no trigger for it, you know, so it's like, you know, maybe I was in denial all these years about what I had seen, but you know, the fact that I haven't experienced anything and I hear all these other people experiencing stuff, it's like I'm jealous. It's like I'm jealous. It's like, do I want to see a dog man? You bet your ass I do. You know?
I know exactly what you're saying. And it's so funny because you said earlier how it changes their lives. And a lot of times people that, if we're just looking at specifically the dog man or werewolf, whatever the hell you want to call it, they see that sometimes these folks, not only can they not sleep and they don't go in the woods again, but like you said, their whole lives change. But still, for people like us, I guess, I'm still jealous too.
It's because they have confirmation. Man. So you've seen shadow people, right? You know, so that you've had a confirmation experience.
Right. I have.
You know
it's what got me started in the whole thing. But just like you said, I'm like, it happened so long ago and you're you're younger and you're like, what? I mean, I know that I saw it. I'm not saying, well, maybe I didn't see it. I'm not saying that at all. I know what I saw. But it just kind of, it kind of dims and it's not as tangible as far as, well, it doesn't really relate to my, you know, daily life now, that's for sure. It doesn't affect my sleep and I don't worry about seeing them in my house or anything like that. So not that I think that's a good thing would be to happen, right? But part of me is like, just let's do this. Like, why has it been so long since I've had, like you said, a confirmation experience? That's the best way to put it.
And I feel like, you know, like I said, when I was 19 to like 21, I bought the bookstore out of every possible book they had on the unexplained. Mm-hmm. And like, I was into this stuff, you know what I'm saying? And like, and I'm a huge stargazer. Like, I go out every night and I look at the stars. I love it. And I know my constellations and I have my phone set so I can see the International Space Station fly over. Like, I love looking at the skies. Never have I seen anything out of place. Never.
Right?
You know,
what the hell?
Right. Like, what the hell? You know, and I've been camping in the woods and I've done this stuff. And when I was a kid, I did play with Ouija boards. You know what I'm saying? And I've consulted tarot cards and rune stones and I study this stuff and it's like nothing. And you know, maybe it's because I do this stuff. Maybe it's because, like, I'm not scared. Maybe it's because they know I'm not scared. Maybe it's because, like, look, John's got a lot of stuff, Same with you. It's like you're doing your show and you're getting so many other people to kind of come out and talk about their experiences, which I'm sure is therapeutic to a lot of people. Even listening, I'm sure someone out there, if there is someone out there who saw that same little squat little demon that I did, they're probably freaking out right now. They're probably like, oh my God, it's true. Thank God.
Yeah, and by the way, and we're going to make sure to give your email out a couple times, but please email Jon-Paul because I know you would just love to hear from someone else that saw something even close to similar to that little bastard.
That little shit, and 3.5 feet tall with like a head that was at least like a 1.5 feet long.
Like, why? Why does it have to look like that? Why does his...
I don't know.
So many whys right there. And by the way, thank you for, telling that. I didn't realize in your email when you said you saw a demon when you were 8 that you had never actually fully told the story. So thank you so much. And as you know, I hadn't told my story, up until just a few years ago. That was always just in my heart and in my mind. And, besides my dad saying that was just military exercises, that was the end of talking about that for me for a very long time. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah, you're welcome, man. It's nice to talk about it because, who knows what people are going to say. It's funny. I know my mom would probably believe me because she's like that. She would say, oh yeah. She has had some experiences in her life, but lots of them were drug induced. When she was a young hippie. One of her friends, had saw a little person while they were in Alaska. And, my mom totally believes in all that. Yeah, I can't remember her friend's name, but they were out there in Alaska and they were, just kind of messing around and like walking around in the wilderness. And I guess she was, kind of turning over stones and looking for unique rocks. And she came across this little stone and flipped it up and there was a little dude there.
Holy crap.
And he looked at her and he said, this is not for your eyes to see.
Oh my goodness.
And she put the stone back down and that was it.
What were the details on this little guy?
I don't know. She never went into it with me. It was just, just a little dude hiding under a rock.
Oh my gosh. That reminds me of the little guys from the orchard in Erie, Florida episode that Mark was talking about.
Episode. That was such a great episode, Shannon. Like that story of the friggin' elves or whatever, the gnomes in the orange grove.
Yeah, they're just some pissed off elves, man. Or gnomes. Sorry, they're like, don't call us elves. How dare you?
The fact that they call one and they put it in a crate, like that is just so friggin' cool. Like I would pay to see that. Like,
right? I'd give a limb. Okay, wait, maybe I just better calm down. Like,
blood sacrifice.
Like self-fulfilling prophecies. I'm like, oh shit.
Right.
What did I say?
You don't want to deal with that.
Yeah. Okay, so, man, I just see we're already an hour and 40 in and I'm like, but there's so much more. Honestly, in a few weeks, we're going to do part 2 because, and I want to throw a little teaser out to everybody because it's something that we discussed, but I am imagining that tonight would not be time constraints wise good for it. As you mentioned, your demonic tarot cards, which are sitting underneath a crystal, and you keep it very safe and sound. On our next episode, me and you, we are going to bust those things out, and we're going to let those things do what they do, and we're just going to see where it goes, right?
Yeah, and I'm down with that, and and I've used them, like I said, a couple of times, not for my own purposes, right? I use a different set of tarot cards when I investigate my own life. But when, like, I need to solve a problem, or if I feel like, cause I work in the prison. I do, like, reentry work. I run a program and, I work with a lot of, hardcore dudes, and they get paroled to my house. And sometimes I'm, like, thinking, like, maybe I gotta consult a demon here, to see what's going on and what's really going on in this house, or is this person gonna survive, cause he's addicted to drugs and now he's back on heroin and like, is there anything I can do to get him off heroin? And like I said, as long as my intentions are okay, I think that I'll be fine. You know what I'm saying? And it's really just ancient knowledge. That's all it is. You just got to remember that they have the knowledge that the angels have. They're the same knowledge. I don't hear a lot of stories of angels coming down talking to people, handing out knowledge. It just seems like demons are just more, they have a propensity to be like, yeah, let's talk about it.
They got the loose lips, huh?
Maybe it's because it drives people further from God. I mean, when you think about it, the more scientific your mind gets, the further from God sometimes you become. So, maybe there is a method to it. I don't know,
Well, I'm excited about that. I apologize that we didn't get that
this
evening, but it'll be a good segue and teaser for our next episode.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Okay, so let's get out all of, your contact info, and if that's just the email for right now, that's totally fine. And then the second that the Facebook group goes up, and even if it's after our next episode, that's totally okay. Don't feel pressured to get that up, but let's get your email out there. If anyone has any demonic possession stories or pot-bellied, crusty little wide mouth, bug-eyed dudes in their house, let's get that email address out there for people.
All right, so the email is live_deep_no_truth@gmail.com. So it's livedeepnotruth, separated by underscores @gmail.com. And right now that's the only contact I have for this. I'm hoping to get the Facebook page up. The semester is over this week, so I'll have a lot more free time. So I'm hoping to get the Facebook page up in a week or two.
And so I don't know if I think I threw this out there and I went right into another question, but when do you think the book might be out? How much more work are you trying to wait for some more stories to possibly come your way?
Yeah. I sent out so many letters to so many churches in Rhode Island.
Yeah.
And I'm sure half of the people just threw them away, and I wrote a very nice letter explaining to people look, I'm not some joker. I'm this is what I do. I'm a theologian.
You're like, I know my shit. Give me some stories.
Right. Stop. The whole church was founded on miracles. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And all of a sudden now people don't want to talk about it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Do you think then, Jon-Paul, that people are losing sight of something like that?
Well, yeah. I mean, shit. I mean, if there were a miracle somewhere, wouldn't that bring asses into churches?
You would think so.
You would think if there was a church down the road from me where there was a bleeding statue of the Virgin Mary, I would be there.
Dude, yeah. I don't really go to church, but I would go for that.
Right. Like I said, I haven't even been baptized, Shannon, it was the decision my parents made, and, I would show up. I would walk through the door for that one. You better believe it. And I'd stick around afterwards too.
Yeah, and just to be clear that you are in Rhode Island and you're hoping to get, within driving distance, obviously. I totally understand that, but you are looking for stories from all over.
Right, I'll take anything. It's nice, and just, like I said, it's easier when you talk to someone and look them in the eyes as to whether or not, they're full of shit,
Yeah. Yeah, but it is good to hear that you are trying to weed out the shit.
Yeah, I don't want that. You know what I'm saying? And like I said, when I listen to people on shows there's so many shows out there, call-in shows, and, I use Vic's show for a lot, because he's got a lot of guests on there who see Dogman, and it's there's been a few guests on there where I'm like, how did this person even get on? It's just I'm not buying it, and some of I think I listen to some other podcasts, one specifically about Bigfoot, and I listen to people that tell these stories who cohabitate with them, and they their dog plays with them, and I'm like, this is such horse shit. It's I want to be able to talk to someone and I want to talk real. I want to see real shit. I don't want to mess around.
Wait, so you don't want to drive to a farm in Rhode Island and see a horse's mane braided by a Sasquatch?
Absolutely not. Now, I would drive to a farm in Rhode Island to see a nightmare horse, with its eyes on fire.
Oh yeah, dude. The mane is just everything's just on fire. The horse is black. Right. You're like, this is up my alley.
I'll take a picture of that.
No freaking braids, man.
And I'll tell you, when the Facebook page comes up, it'll be under the Rhode Island Demonological Society, or the RIDS. That's what it's going to be called.
Okay.
So, people can start searching for that, within a fortnight, hopefully.
Yeah, just, shoot me we'll keep in contact, obviously, because we will be doing this again very soon, because I have a whole nother, we didn't get to the tissue in the wine and the vessel and anyway, people are going to go, well, God damn it, talk about it, but I can't. So next time, they got to have a next time, right? It'll be good.
We gotta have it.
Yeah,